And Susan, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Herlihy,
Here.
Mr. Slavin,
Here.
Mr. Napier,
Here.
Mr. Frank,
Here.
Mr. Moda,
Here.
Mr. Hoffman is excused,
Correct.
Mr. Hall.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Introduction of members. I'll start at my right, your left. Larry Napier is a new member of the Budget Committee. Welcome, Larry.
Thank you.
Michael Frank, to my right, has been a member for a while. Myself, Ed Herlihy, Sergio Mata, Harry Hall, Tim Slavin. And that's, Bruce Hoffman is on a cruise. And he's been a member before, and he'll join us the next meeting, I believe. And I'll turn it over to you, Ken.
Okay, what we typically do at
Microphone.
our typical action at our first meeting is to select a chairperson and a vice chair. The first item is selection of a chairperson, so we should entertain nominations. I do need to put on the record, I got a email from Bruce Hoffman. He desired to submit his email to the committee as his way of nominating Ed Herlihy. I checked with the city attorney, and that's not acceptable to consider that an official nomination or something that can be actually put in the record, and his vote would not count because he is not in attendance. But I wanted to make you aware that he did indicate that in his email. So we should take nominations.
I would move that we meet Larry Napier as chairperson.
Seconded.
Any further nominations? Okay, I guess we declare Larry as our new chairperson. Congratulations, Larry. Do you guys want to switch seats and then?
Larry, you want to come up here?
Sure.
Thank you.
And with the selection of the vice chairperson,
Yes.
their nomination.
I nominate Ed Herlihy. Ed.
I would second that.
Any other nominations? All those in favor? Aye.
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 Oh, I thought they were on.
Thank you.
Okay. Now we do approval of minutes, the meeting of August 1, 2016. I personally have not had a chance to look at those because I did not get the packet. So I'll have to rely on somebody else that's actually read the minutes too, because I wasn't here at the meeting anyway, so.
Move approval.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. 7B, meeting of August the 8th, 2016.
I need to make a comment here, Mr. Chair. The meeting of August 8th reflects that the August 1st minutes were approved at the August 1st the meeting of August 8th indicates the August 1st meetings were approved on August 8th. They were scheduled on the agenda, but we did not have those minutes ready at that meeting. So you have not seen them before this packet went out for August 1st and August 8th. So your action on August 1st was correct, and now August 2nd, it probably should be corrected and have the minutes reflect that the August 1st minutes were not approved.
Well, Ed, have you reviewed those minutes?
Yep.
They look okay to you?
Yep,
Okay.
yep.
So I guess we can take a motion on the August 8th meeting.
So
Ed said
moved.
they're okay. Second? Second. Okay. All those in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Aye. Now, review of the fourth quarterly report for fiscal, wait a minute. Are you sure that's 16 or should that be 17?
I'm afraid it's 16, yes. This is our fourth quarter ending September 30th of 2016.
Oh, it's the September. It's not I thought it was the December quarter.
I wish.
Okay. So we're only getting up through September.
Yes.
Okay. I guess we turn this over to you for that.
Typically, what we do, this is the standard format we've used for 3 or 4 years now, I guess. I give a rundown in the report of any budget changes that have been made during that quarter. I list those, and probably the biggest one that we had the last quarter of last fiscal year was the one to fund the extra costs that we had on the early retirement program. We had payouts to the employees that did choose to go into the program, so that impacted the budget, and we waited till everything settled down, and then in August we made an entry to add monies back into the departmental budgets. And this was discussed at the budget hearings, if you recall, and with the city council, where $371,000 was appropriated, and the city council chose to replenish 1/2 of that amount in the current year 2017 budget, expecting that in 2018 they would recover the rest of it, and basically recovering it from the savings from those positions that were absolved or deleted or filled with lesser pay for doing that job. So I do some graphic presentations of each of the major funds. I don't typically get into details unless people or members have questions or issues with something that's presented. I can tell you that the general fund reserve amount is $5.5 million at September 30th. $478,000 of that has been set aside, so we really have about $5 million of uncommitted, unassigned reserve monies. And I'll speak more as I get in further into the report. Our
So
revenues.
now, that 487, Ken, can I ask a question? That 487 that you said is set aside for other designations and other reserves, is that in addition to what's already reserved and designated in the other 4 categories?
It is an addition. In fact, it's not even shown on our financial statements. When we were sending the notes to breakdown of the reserves, it's not even considered an assigned allocation of the reserves. We passed a resolution a couple years ago where we would say that of our reserve monies, any amounts we had of revenues and exceeding expenses in any fiscal year would be earmarked. And because we went through all the years of not replacing equipment and letting infrastructure not be as maintained as well, we said, okay, we're going to recognize that those profits for years we had profits would be earmarked. Right now, that balance is, or at September 30th, is $478,000 then that the city manager has authority to replace a piece of broken equipment rather than pay for the repair costs. It may not make sense, but it wasn't budgeted, so, we have the ability to take action on it and then report in our quarterly report what was done and how that balance changed. So there is a detailed breakdown as part of my report.
Now, was that 487 all the carry forward out of fiscal 16? Was that the total carry forward in the general fund?
No, the 5 million, the 5.5 million was actually carried forward.
Well, I'm speaking about the operating carry forward, not the balance that you already had. I'm
Yes.
just talking about the results of the 12 months that was fiscal 16.
For the 12 months.
How much was that carry forward? Was it that 487?
No, the carry forward for this last year was 200 and,
3 something. Well, the number I'm trying to get at is I'm trying to look, because I know they did a special millage rate to pay back something they owed the general fund. They did an extra millage rate. They increased the millage rate like 0.3 of a mil or something to pay back what the general fund loaned to do something, I think, with retirees. The carry forward was more than that number.
yes.
So I'm wondering why you increased the millage rate when you had enough carry forward to repay the fund. And since your resolution already says it goes this way anyway.
Okay, I see where you're coming from, but what the council did, they changed the millage from we had 3.8556 the previous year.
Right.
Rather than going with the rollback rate, the ultimate outcome was they came back to 3.8000.
Right.
And that difference still allowed half of the repayment of the early retirement program.
Right, right. I thought it had to do with the early retirements. It did with the early retirements, right?
But our reserves were actually
Yeah.
5 million free and clear, not obligated,
Yes.
plus the 478 that
Right.
was several years now of the difference between revenues and expenses.
That resolution designated some of that fund, or it designated, I guess, all of the fund balance for a specific purpose, so it no longer is called undesignated, right? That's the reason the number dropped. So you're only going to be looking at your unencumbered fund balance of just a shade over $5 million instead of 5.3 million this year, correct?
That is correct.
Now I'm straight. I'm clear.
But hold on to that thought, because
Okay.
there's more to the story.
Does everybody else understand the questions I was asking? Because I know it gets kind of complicated on these things.
So I did want to point out that our revenues last year were 101% of budget, and our spending for all the departments in general fund was about 96% overall. That resulted in $222,000 that was revenues over and above expenses. So that 222 increased our R&R reserve up to the 478. But the total of all reserves we had was the 5.5 million. Excuse me. Part of the report, we give a breakdown of all our capital projects. We assign a project number and track each project for its lifetime. So there were many projects during the year that were closed out. It's been a continued struggle to reduce the amount of unfinished projects. Every year we add a few more, and some of them are multi-year projects, so they continue. I think you'll see a lot of attention. Well, I'm sure you're going to see a lot of attention from both the city council and I I would expect the committee would have, be looking at this every quarter and kind of saying, where are you guys on completing some of these, particularly the very publicly visible projects. But one one-page report that I do that I'm rather proud of is we do present all our city investments. I give you a breakdown by fund of all the money in the local bank account, and we have monies at the State Board of Administration. I talked for a number of months last year about having a third option, so we did get permission from the City Council to establish an account with Florida Trust. Florida Trust offered a program of purchase of government securities up to 5 years, but their average maturity is 2 years. So they were in the 2-year market, hopefully to get a better return on our investment than we could get on our daily deposit rates that we get to the state board and the local bank account.
Is that one with the League of Cities?
This one was
Or is
actually
it one of those
created,
private ones?
this was created by the clerk of the courts. Back when the SBA had its
Okay.
issues, that was
So
their...
it's that clerk of the court trust?
It kind of gave an option from
Right.
SBA, but it was the clerk of the courts that created it. I jumped into this after the end of the year on October 5th. I made an initial deposit of $500,000. That's not in the reports you see presented at September 30th. But I did want to disclose that. The returns haven't been, I mean, you're talking about an investment return of a 2-year security and bad timing. When I put in $500,000, I did fine the first month, which was by the end of October. November, the market didn't do well at all, so I lost money. I lost part of the $500,000, about, I think you're talking like $800, $900. In December, I recovered some of that, but I'm still short, last report I have, about $400 from the $500,000. You don't panic with these kind of investments. Hopefully the market is
I was
going to...
going to say, what are they doing, soft dollaring the fees out of that on you? Or what are they paying, like 28 basis points?
Well, their historic returns, and what I was looking at, and the reason I wanted to get into it, they were making over 1 percentage point
Yeah.
versus 0.5% or that we were getting on our local monies or the state board. So
Right.
now at this point, the state board is up to about 0.90. So it was a bad move. It sounded like a good theory, but yeah, and I think long-term investment strategy, it's good to have monies in more than just two
Have
pots.
you looked at the League of Cities one that they have? That Florida Municipal Investment Trust?
They were one I looked at the same time.
Last time I looked at the numbers, I think they were a little bit ahead of that one the clerk's office set up.
They did, right now they are, yes, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. So that might be something you want to look at.
It may be another option.
You
true.
get back to your $500,000, I'd find another home to put it.
Yeah.
I don't like losing
Well,
principal.
I don't want to be too, like I say, it's just been like 2.5 months of experience with them, so they're not changing their website and their advertised return on investments, so
Well, I think
I'll
our
be
clerk
watching
here's
it,
on that board. I think
Pardon?
our clerk in Indian River County is on that board. I think Jeff Smith's on that board.
you're
for that.
correct. I remember seeing
He's
that.
on that board for that trust.
The other thing we do in our quarterly report is to have each department give a little write-up on their activities that they had during that quarter. Different styles, different kinds of information. I would encourage you, if you have suggestions or you want to see additional kind of statistical data or something from these departments, let me know and I'll pass that word on and we'll get some modifications done. But it's not something that I particularly focus on because I'm the numbers guy. And
Now, do you all produce a monthly financial statement? Because I looked on the website, I couldn't find any such thing.
a monthly?
A monthly financial statement that shows the revenues and expenses for the city compared to the budget.
We have,
Is that something that will be on the clerk's website in the minutes? Because I didn't get a chance to look in there.
We don't really report on a
On a monthly
on
basis.
a monthly basis publicly. We have internally some reports we, of course, could share that we list every account, budget, and actual expenses by department, and our revenues, of course. But it's off the computer system, and it's not really formatted in any kind of decent presentation. But, I mean, an accountant, of course, could look at it and make some sense of it if you wanted to track it monthly, so. So that's really the, I should mention too that typically our procedure is we present the quarterly report to the budget committee. If you've got changes or concerns or haven't really presented something thoroughly, I'm always open to make modifications before it's presented for approval at the city council. Because of the timing, the lateness, I mean, we're reporting at, on September 30th here at the end of January, so I'm really kind of embarrassed by it, but I went ahead and got the city council to consider it at their January 25th meeting, so I wouldn't have to delay any further. The good news is I have a final draft from the auditors. Well, I shouldn't say final, but it's one that hopefully includes all my modifications, corrections, suggestions, and so forth.
That's your rough draft there, the
That's
fiscal
my-
16?
Yes. So I need a day or so to actually make sure they've made all these changes, then hopefully we can go through their final review of their top partnerships and get that report out. I typically, we've been running like the last meeting of March for the prior year financial statements. I'd sure like to get that moved up
Yeah.
substantially, but
Into February?
I would, my target.
Because
and I-
you report to the GFOA for the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting, right?
Yes, we do.
That's got to be in by the middle of April, right? End of April?
Actually, I think we have 60, I'm sorry. I'm not sure. I think it's March 31st, but
To go to GFOA? It may be. It used to be April 15th.
but they hand out extensions of time pretty freely as long as it's not a recurring every year thing, kind of thing. But, I mean, it's just a matter of pride in reporting on our activities. You know, it's just kind of old news at this point, so I'd like to do better there, but we will be working on that. And that's all I had as far as the quarterly report, and that, unless there should be questions. So.
Ken, a quick question, and I think I asked this a few years ago, but it just occurred to me again. The whole accomplishment memo takes a fair amount of time for people to do that, doesn't it? Is it worthwhile? It just seems as though there's an awful lot of time spent doing it when other things could be done. You could debate that as, I suppose the city manager could peruse down through it and see what people have done. It might be worthwhile for him. I don't know, I haven't talked to Joe about it. But it's always seemed to me to just be, to be most candid, to be a waste of time. You may not want to express an opinion.
Well, I of course, this was in place when I first came on board,
Right.
and so there was an expectation there, but I would really question the value of that. And that's why I say if you've got ideas on how maybe less information would be more valuable and maybe more specifics of what kind of measurements you would like to see. I mean, we do tend, like Public Works will give
Well, I'm happy
information
with
on-
just looking at something out of your computer system on a monthly period. It shows the
To see
revenues,
the
budget,
numbers.
year-to-date, revenues and expenditures. I'd just like to look at that monthly. That's what I find most useful.
Yeah.
And then the quarterly reports, that's, however you want to do that's fine with me. I don't care how you report that. I like to use the monthly numbers to look at to see how we're doing.
Well, I can speak to the city manager, but I suspect unless he's getting some sense from the elected officials that they really liked that for some reason, he would be willing to drop it. I mean, he's there on a daily basis, involved with the departments. He sees what's going on. He kind of sees the level of activity. I doubt that he really relies on this information, and it is I'll say a chore for the departments to take time out of their schedule, coordinate gathering all the information. I have to follow up with many times, have you got to this yet? Well, no, I was working on the FEMA reimbursement that you wanted to, or I was working on, some agenda item that was more critical. So it is kind of, cost benefit wise, I don't think it's there.
Just as a thought, does any member of the committee read this and use it?
I look at the quarterly.
We talk
No,
about
I'm
the
talking just about the accomplishment. All this stuff at the end, every department. Doesn't look as though anybody even pays
I
any.
think that goes to the performance measurements in the budget, doesn't it? It's why they do that, so the city manager can see where they are quarterly. It probably means something to Joe, because he gets to look at how they're doing against what's in the budget. Because if you look in the budget, Ken's got a couple of pages in each department that shows what their goals and objectives are. And I would imagine that's the tool that Joe looks at to see how they're performing compared to their measurements.
I can't remember in any conversations with him about that, because it's been a few years.
I would be glad to address that with him, and perhaps what's presented in the budget, those statistical tables we give on,
Yeah.
on maybe more relevant stuff than how many potholes were filled and.
See, obviously, that's the reason I went with the monthly thing. I don't really care about that quarterly thing. We're not management of the city. We don't need to look at whether they're meeting. I don't think it's a part of the budget committee to check whether a department's meeting its performance measurement check marks through the budget process. That's between you and Joe, as far as I'm concerned.
If the committee's fine with it, I will.
And I think that's past our scope. I don't think we really need to look at that.
Okay. Thank you for your thoughts.
But if anybody else wants to get it, some of the other committee members may find it useful.
Yeah, please let me know if, or like I say, if there's changes.
I personally, I find it useful, so you can just include me, and delete, those specific pages. You can include me and not delete those specific pages.
Yeah, you're right.
Okay.
I feel the same way. When I look at the total numbers, then I'll go back and look at the accomplishments. Granted, most of what's in here accomplishments are a slap on the back, hey, we did a good job. But if I see something that looks like a discrepancy or a red flag to me, I can sometimes look in there and say, oh yeah, I see why they had this or what I might consider an over expenditure or so forth. So yes, I too would like to see it.
Okay.
Well, if we're going to put it out, let's just give it to everybody, make one packet.
Of course, yes.
And those of us that don't want to look at it can just put it in a round file. Personally, I like the monthly numbers. That's what I like to look. After you make your monthly journal entries, and you get those done usually about the 10th or 12th of the month, however quick you guys get to it.
Okay.
And since they don't put it out publicly, I don't think we're public. I think we're considered a part of the city for this. I don't think that will be anything public. But I would find that more useful for me, the way I like to look at the budget. I don't know whether any other member would want a monthly number. I imagine that it'd only be about 15 or 20 pages, right? What are you doing, front and back?
And I may be able to consider somehow on the website if they're, for whoever's interested. I mean, there's nothing
If
secret
it's on the
about it.
website, I'd go get it. I mean, I'd go out there and look at it, because I really don't need the paper. I could look at it if it was on the website. That would be fine with me. I don't know whether anybody else on the committee would like to look at it monthly or not.
I guess maybe I'm confused. Like, what are we asking about? Just including that in the papers we print out, or?
No, that's just something I wanted, a monthly statement. His quarterly report is all he's going to do for this committee unless you ask for something else.
Okay. Because the breakdown, that's not made for us. That's just, right, we just get that in our packet.
Well, you've also got to remember that the way the city council's set up, they're set up to read and approve quarterlies. They're not set up and I can't speak for them, but they're not set up for monthlies.
Right, we don't meet monthly.
And that's when you amend the budget too, you just do that quarterly, right? If you have to do a budget amendment, it's only done with that quarterly review.
Yes, sir.
And that's fine for city council. I'm not asking you to do anything special. I would imagine once you get the journal entries posted, somebody on your staff just hits a button and it prints an income statement, a balance sheet.
Well, indeed, we do push the button, after everything's said and done, and provide that information to each department so that they
Right.
have an official tracking of where they stand. So it's not insurmountable to, like you say, at least come up with an access for a monthly reporting, but yeah, I would expect we would
I
continue.
mean, I wouldn't want you to have to do something extra,
Understand.
no more than what you already do.
But if, I would press the point a little bit with the quarterly report. I don't get a lot of feedback on the graphics, so if you guys would like to look at that, to me, I was trying to come up with some way to convey to a citizen
I
that,
like to look
yeah,
at the numbers. I like to compare actual to budget.
because I spend quite a bit of time on the graphics, so perhaps I should be modifying it for even the council to show maybe a quarterly summation of the monthlies.
Yeah.
Without, I'd be happy to entertain basically like maybe come up with a redesign to throw back at you guys.
Well, you can check, and if it's not a big deal, that would be more helpful to me. But otherwise, I can live on a quarterly stuff.
Because I do think that the format I'm using is getting kind of stale. I think it gets, tell me if I'm wrong, but I don't think it really gives you a good sense of whether we're making progress or dropping behind. So,
That's why I like to use the year-to-date numbers and the monthly numbers compared to budget. I find that useful to me.
well, I would tend to agree with you as a numbers guy. Okay, we'll work on that then. Did you wanna
Anything
move-
else?
Oh, that's really all I had on the quarterly report.
General discussion by members, thoughts and ideas for the upcoming budget year. Let's start down at the end, but since I know Ed's been chairman on this thing for a number of years,
Excuse me, can I ask one question before we do that, as far as the procedure?
yeah.
I'm not real clear how we want to approach it this year. Obviously, our input for things that we would like to be considered for the upcoming budget, but will we be getting a list from staff as to what your projected wish list would be? And any input that might be from the city council to you?
Read this and your question will be answered. This page here. Look down that calendar. I think that'll answer your question. Because what Ken will do is give us a tentative budget that'll have all that stuff in it, right?
True. This item, as far as y'all considering your thoughts, of course, I issued this agenda before the council on the 25th, considered the budget calendar, which is your next item on the agenda. They indeed have added another step in the process that added onto the calendar for February 8th. They wanted on their agenda discussion of budget objectives from the city council to basically share with staff and the committee, so that what was expressed was that they could basically set the tone at the top, and we would fill in the blanks, hopefully with the answers they desired, but or have reasoning as to why we couldn't. So I've given you the actual discussion in the draft minutes from the September 25th City Council meeting, and I've given you a modified calendar. I'd still say, everybody's opinion is of value, so if you go on to throw out ideas at this meeting, wait until the city council meeting of February 8th, and
Maybe the 13th, I think we're a little early in the process, start throwing out ideas right now, except broad overview items. Because I wouldn't know any specifics on the next year's upcoming stuff, because I looked on the website to see where we were for the 3 months this year, and I couldn't find anything. I had to go back to the 2015 CAFR, that's all I could look at.
I'd certainly encourage you to attend the February 8th meeting if it's possible, or watch it on TV and get like firsthand what the city council people are expressing. You know, I don't know exactly what to expect, but
So we'll be getting a working document from them for our next meeting. And now we'll be considering additional items for them to consider for their working document to come back to us.
You probably won't have tentative budget ready till, what, end of April? Middle of May?
probably late May, yes.
Yeah, because I know Dave Nolte's office is not going to give you the tentative, that may come out the last week in May.
And actually, the tentative estimate is June 1st.
Yeah. He's been getting it
So-
out a little earlier, the last 2 or 3 years. He's been before. He's been like the 25th or 26th of May popping that thing
Yeah,
out.
but I think it's usually probably the first week or two of June. After we know that number, we kind of make last minute tweaking.
Well, if you
to
know
the
that
document.
number, you can really start finalizing things in your proposal.
Now, we start working on it fairly soon. I think within a couple of weeks, we'll start getting the departments to document what they're asking for as far as capital items, so. What can I say? We will do what we gotta do to try to make
You good with
everybody
that, Harry?
satisfied.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we knew what they're envisioning, and that we can also let them know what the committee would also like to be considered before we get too far down in the budget process where it has to be put off to a following period. So I'm good with that.
Well, here we can get a broad overview of thoughts, and I'll start with Ed, since he's got a lot of experience on this committee. Would you like to start with number 9 there, Ed?
What I did, and Larry, you apparently did not get it. I hope everybody else did. I sent out a memo that was a list of items that we had discussed in the past, budget items, concerns, discussion items that passed through the committee. And there were on that list, and it's just, as I said in the memo, that was something I put together. It was in my head. No pride of authorship. For you guys to look at and add to, subtract, multiply, divide, spindle, and mutilate, whatever. I just go down them real quickly. Things that are obvious that we have discussed over and over again, but need to be discussed. The golf course and where we are with that. The airport, more income. Police pension fund, where we are on that. Big question mark. Do we spend more money on roads, or have we peaked out as of last year where we're spending, this year, excuse me, we're spending 800,000, roughly?
Almost.
Yeah, almost 800,000 on roads. Whether that will, and we think that that may taper down, but where do we go there? Are there any stormwater projects? Are we going to do anything about canal bulkheads, or are we all set? IT updates, department manning and costs, general fund reserve loan payback. And we discussed it a little bit before, you brought it up, Larry, that we had a payback. What they did, what the council ultimately did is cut it in half. They paid $186,000 last year, and we're due to pay $186,000 this year and get that back where that fund should be. Working waterfront, whether we spend any money, Cavcore parking lot to finish that project, the south parking lot, which is the parking lot south of the Riverview Park, the one that's grass and mud and dirt and everything else, and other capital spending. And that was the list. I know you can't all remember it, but I think you've got it. And the idea is that we discuss these things with appropriate people, staff people, our city manager, however they want to do it, and see where we are on things and suggestions that we might have. That was the idea behind this. So we can get you a copy.
Well, that's what I'm trying to put together now. I'm trying to get some idea of where we are with the capital improvements budget and where we are with projects doing that. How many we're finishing, how many we're just ignoring, how many we're pulling off the plan. I assume that goes back to council if you change that 5-year plan.
Well, that's all in the list that you don't have.
Right.
But it shows what's,
I'll get it from Ken.
it shows what's closed out, you know, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And they've been trying, since Joe Griffin became city manager, he's been trying to reduce the number of projects and get them, the older ones, closed out. But typical fashion, what happens is more projects creep in. So they're working on it. So that's what that's
See,
where
that's
I
what
am.
I'm talking about. That's like the broad overview. That's really a good broad overview for like everything we probably need to look at.
I would say one thing that you probably, you people who've been here a while remember. The city really fell behind on capital equipment. And we fell practically flat on our face in the IT department. They almost went off the air. So we don't want that to happen again. And they're on a 5-year plan, I believe, to basically replace the hardware, the computers that we use. And there's roughly 140, 150 machines throughout the city, including the police department. And that includes the police cars and the whole 9 yards. But there are those things that need to be looked at and discussed and see where we're going with them.
Well, 7, 8, 9 were tough years on everybody in the government business all over the country. I mean, that crash of real estate values kind of put the kibosh on everybody.
But we've come back very well, it seems. I mean, we've felt that in the past couple of years, and the city doesn't have much debt, and we're coming. This building is done this year, right?
This coming year, yes, the final payment.
Yeah. So we're out from under this thing, and so the city does not have a lot of debt. And so many other cities came through the thing with huge debt and are still saddled with it, and we're not.
Well, you still got the gas tax note out there, right? Mm-hmm. That's still got 4 or 5 years left on it? I'm just looking at the amounts of money in there and what you're paying off each year, because all I saw was that page in your CAFR that had the numbers on it, you know? And I could see the big note was, I guess, when they built this site here.
Yep.
Yeah.
They did this site back here and all this stuff. They did the whole shooting match.
Now, Larry, you really need to have the privilege of looking at our budget and our capital program. I do some.
I looked at the current budget. I looked at that pretty well.
Do you see the schedules in the very back where I take each, like special revenue fund, and I actually project it out based on the capital improvement program and expected revenues and expenses. But I think there's some areas in there I'd be glad to point out to you that might give you the gist of it in a quick fashion. So, but yeah, the big relief for us is the DST being renewed. I mean, had that not happened.
Well, I noticed you had a little over $3 million budgeted for capital improvements this year, right?
Yes, sir.
In this year's budget, and that 800,000 Ed mentioned earlier was, most of that was in the gas tax fund. I'm assuming that's road projects.
Yes.
Since it was in the gas tax fund, that's what I'm assuming.
But We, well, there's an extensive story, but we were able to free up some gas tax monies that had been spent on like operational kind of things and get them all devoted towards road work or resurfacing, so. And we used some DST monies to reconstruct some streets, so.
Anything else, Ed?
See if we discussed anything else that I can think of. Anybody got any ideas that we went over last year? I think we spent a great deal of time on the roads. And, no, I think that's, off the top of my head, that's pretty much what we've got going. We do want to make sure, and every time I say it to Ken, he makes a face, so, I mean, because we hope that the council will go along with the idea of paying back the 186 into the general fund reserve, so that we keep that up where we've had it in the last few years. And that's all I got.
Well, you know, along the discussion of the roads, there was some discussion on safety at some intersections when we were discussing the roads last year. And I don't know if any of that's going to entail any additional funding. For instance, the Barber and Joy Haven with the bridge there, where it's very difficult for anyone to be able to see oncoming traffic. The transportation gentleman said that they were looking into, I thought he said putting in a traffic signal there. But I'm not sure where that funding would come from and if that's being considered for this year's budget or not.
Yeah, our next budget committee meeting is scheduled for February 13th.
13th.
And I kind of anticipated that, you know, some of this discussion about the city council's input on it, taking into consideration some budget committee members, and like you just mentioned, you know, the status of some of these capital items that have come up in the past, I thought we may want to invite Frank Watanabe, our city engineer, because he's the one most familiar with what's been done, what's still in the works, is there permitting delays, or is there a cost that we need to anticipate? So that might be a good possibility for the next, for the
'Cause
February 13th meeting.
I didn't see anything in your capital improvement plan that would address any of that.
And if I remember, I think when he came last year, when he talked about Barber and Joy Haven, since we both live on Joy Haven, I think we're some of the members that are most impacted by that issue. I think he was applying for some sort of grant from the DOT, and I'm not sure that the process, I guess, when he comes, it's in maybe the next meeting or in the future, near future, we can ask him about the progress, about the DOT grant, because I think there's certain requirements in terms of cars, in terms of travel, in terms of the amount of cars that are used along the roadways, so.
And I didn't know if there's any matching funds that would go along with that grant that would impact the budget, so.
Yeah, kind of depend on which step he's at in the process. I don't know if he's got to the point where he's got specific grant monies identified and what their requirements for matching would be, but we can certainly put him on the spot and have him address some of those concerns. I did want to follow up on, Ed touched on the amount of the reserves, and $5 million sounds like a lot of money, and this is a discussion we have every year. And it's always tempting to say, well, we'll balance the budget using reserve monies or, you know, coast for a few years without, you know, having a lower millage rate. This past October when we had Hurricane Matthew, I mean, this is the eye-opener because we have all the damage on the docks. They are talking like $1.4 million.
Isn't that insured?
Well, it's not insured. Our policy specifically excludes anything over the water. It's
You can
eligible.
get
You're
you
trying-
can get riders to cover docks and piers and wharfs, Ken.
If you're
And it's
willing
not
to-
that expensive.
Well, that's not what I've been told. I don't have any actual price.
Y'all still
and-
got your liability through the League of Cities?
But what we're doing, no, we changed. We have Pidgeot.
You went to Pidgeot?
Preferred Governmental Insurance
Well,
Trust.
they have it, and it's not that bad. Who, is your agent Michelle Martin?
No. Our agent is Jonathan Gilad. He's out of Winter Park, or his firm is. We are pursuing FEMA reimbursement for the docks.
I would look at trying to get that stuff insured. I'd try to get that stuff on insurance.
You know, Larry,
You're gonna run into all kind of red tape with FEMA when you put those things back. I mean, I read an article in the paper where they wanted to cut 100 feet off this, 100 feet off that. Well, FEMA's gonna make you put back what was there, and they're gonna make you bring it up to code.
We are going through that
If you
discussion.
chop 100 feet off one and 200 feet off another one, they're not gonna pay for it. They're gonna tell you that right up front.
Larry, the TC Palm was reporting just last week that they couldn't find any insurance companies that would write for insurance for docks, and that
I think Brown has a.
Palm Beach
Brown has
County
a
were
market
listed
for
with so
that.
many millions and all that they had to eat. So I don't know if it's accurate or not, but that's what the paper was reporting.
Well,
Phone call to check it out.
Well, in this instance, it's like the horse is out of the barn already because we've.
Yeah, it's a little late for that now, but
That's for next time, yes.
this is something that happens, it happens every year. We don't get these events every year, but the season's here every year, and I would try to get everything I could under insurance, as long as it's reasonable. Of course, I wouldn't pay a $10,000 a year premium on a $20,000 dock. That makes no sense. But if you get those things added on in a lump, the way they do, and I don't know, it's like, they offer insurance on roads, but it's expensive for what you get, and nobody gets it. Because you just don't insure roads.
No, it's something we have to evaluate, but for now, what we're looking at is trying to get a good portion of the 1.4 million reimbursed through FEMA.
Now, I look at fund balances. If I was going to use fund balance, I'm very slow to say okay to that, but it would be okay if it were a one-time expenditure. Now, you don't want to dip into your fund balance and spend it and hire 10 people and put them on the payroll, because you're going to shoot yourself in the foot, because that's going to grow each year. It's going to get bigger and bigger. It's going to snowball on you. When you spend your fund balance, it can be spent as long as you meet your policy, because I know your policy now has got you at like 3 months. And you're a pretty good chunk over that.
Yeah, well, about 50%, actually.
Yeah, I think your policy around 3 million or a little bit less would be what your policy would require you to have in that undesignated.
Yes.
And I didn't check in detail, and I think it separates the ones you've got designated and reserved and the other categories. I don't think that counts in that number. But I'd be careful about using that to balance a budget too, unless it were a one-time expenditure.
Exactly.
Because that's not a good idea to start spending down your fund balance, because that's a slippery slope you get on.
And that's what we've been trying to do, is maintain that level, because it does
Well, y'all
create-
got a healthy fund balance. I mean, it's up there pretty good. It's double what I see that your policy needs to be.
Well, I think the policy needs to be changed, personally, to match what we're doing, but
That's,
it's a
You
matter of
guys are
opinion.
managed, but
It's
that's what
it's
you
like the
do.
level of insurance. I mean, it's what
I'm
you
gonna
can-
offer you ideas. I'm gonna look at what you're all doing, and I'm gonna let you know where I see something that,
course.
if that's big, because I don't see any reason to tax extra money to replace something in a fund balance when your carryover from the previous fiscal year is gonna be more than that. Must just take that amount of money and put it wherever you need it. You didn't need to adjust the millage rate to do that.
Okay.
It just makes the bucket get bigger. If you do that, the bucket keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I went back and looked at through y'all's 10-year history in there. And that's when I noticed some of your debt. Ed mentioned you all didn't have a lot of long-term debt, but some of that debt was traded for notes. And I didn't have a chance to look at that and see what it was. I didn't look at your note, the note section of your notes in the CAFR. But it looked like you had like, 4 years ago, you had like $7 million in there, and I assumed that was the most of this. And then I noticed a footnote that said that was traded for notes. You refinanced some of that for notes.
Yes, all our.
But I didn't see the notes, because I was only looking at the long-term debt schedule. So I didn't have a chance to go back and look at the notes and trace that through. So those notes are debt too, they're just not showing on the debt schedule. So it might be a little confusing to some people if they read that number and say, oh, well, this is all the debt we've got, but you got these notes over here that you have to pay back too.
Yeah.
And I'm assuming it's the same pledge of money. It's infrastructure money that backs that pledge up,
Yes.
I would assume. None of that's GO debt, right? I couldn't see anything in your CAFR that indicated anything was GO debt.
That's correct. There is not.
Okay, well, that was a good discussion. Michael?
Ken, did we end up, on the hurricane, end up close to 2 million total expenditure?
I'm sorry?
Did we end up spending almost 2 million on the hurricane between the?
Yeah, well, if you count the 1.4 million for the docks, we have well over $100,000 of payroll kind of costs that we hope to get reimbursed for. Essentially, for a good part, is the overtime costs that were not expected. And we had another $55,000 of miscellaneous, some netting down, some minor structural damage, and I'm trying to get part of that back from the insurance company, but have not been successful yet. But yes, the total out there that we in effect have laid out from our 5 million is about $2 million.
And this wasn't a full hurricane?
This was a brush.
Yeah.
And that's my concern. And how I have quantified and tried to justify $5 million is I've looked at if we had a storm event that actually did damage to businesses and residents to the extent that they couldn't continue operation, then they're no longer paying utility taxes, you're no longer getting franchise fees on those accounts. They're perhaps moving out of the area, so you're not getting the sales taxes, gas taxes. Now, granted, experience has it that when you have those kind of events, you have a sales tax bump, because then you've got the contractors rebuilding and that type of thing. But at least initially, you're going to go, depending on what you think your rebuild time is going to be. But if it's 18 months, 2 years, 2.5 years before things get back to normal, and you rebuilt, you've lost that revenue stream. And you've got an increased need for building inspectors, public works people to take care of the city facilities. I mean, that's the missing part. I mean, many people look at it and say, well, we'll have insurance to cover our damage, and we'll have FEMA reimbursements that'll come back to us. And that's fine, but FEMA, I mean, we're still working on that October storm, even getting a first review by the FEMA people. So it's terribly frustrating. We've redone our work papers.
Have
and
you done the
resubmitted.
PWs? That's what I was gonna ask. Have you done the public works project forms for them?
The
paperwork that you have to do to submit it to FEMA?
We've taken a shot. We've tried to use their Excel sheets.
I guess that $1 million, was that all the piers and docks you got out there, or was that just, that was all 4 or 5 of them, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and that's the
And
total.
see, and I don't know whether they'd probably write those up as individual projects, and I don't know whether any of those would be. They still split them into large projects and small projects.
That's still what we're dealing with, is how they.
Yeah, trying to figure out how to get those things divvied up. And I know you still you need, but you got $375,000 or $400 there. It's a storm reserve. That's already reserved in your general fund.
We took that away. I know what you're talking about. It was in the policy previously.
Yeah, it was in there. Would you
And
roll it out someplace else?
Well, when
See, that was designed originally to cash flow till you start getting insurance and FEMA money, because this generally, after one of these events, it's generally at least 90 days before the insurance company starts cutting loose any cash.
It's been
And
beyond 90 days.
FEMA,
I've been
you're gonna be
working on it.
5 or 6 years getting back with them.
But if you think of this brush being a $2 million hit on our reserves, 375 wouldn't have helped, and
That'll probably get minimized. You
In
probably
fact-
won't have to take all of
in
that.
fact, if I recall, the 375, I think they used it up for equipment replacements when they couldn't afford to balance the budget any other way. So it was practically down to zero, and that's why I implemented.
Well, you
okay,
might wanna look at back setting up that storm reserve again. If y'all move that out someplace, put a reserve in there for these events.
Ken, how much overtime was incurred, roughly?
Most of that was in the police department, and the number of $50,000 comes to mind. Plus, we'd have the fringe benefits factor on top of that. But I think in terms of overtime wages or eligible wages from the police department, I think that piece was about 50. And I'm thinking the public works crews, the extra pay that they got is probably going to be about equivalent to that. So that's why I'm roughly using $100,000. Like I say, these spreadsheets are still being developed, and it's been difficult to come up with a exact number that FEMA is going to be billed for.
And they gave you a, what, 2-3 day time period that overtime would qualify for?
There's
Public
there's
Works
a lot
might
of
be a little bit
little,
longer.
yeah, there's
Well, that's preliminary. That's if they have to do things preliminarily.
the emergency preparedness.
72 hours, the first 72 hours, right, is 3 days. You take the first 72 hours of those events, once they're declared an emergency or a disaster, and those are separated from the other things.
I
You'll
understand.
generally get all of those back.
I understand. The last hurricane before that, I had to submit over $2 million in overtime for the sheriff's office, so
The other big hit I didn't mention was the debris pickup cost. The contractors that came in and cleared the streets and took all that debris out, and now we did a remarkable job in addressing it and getting contractors in here. And did it in a timely basis compared to some of our neighboring communities, so. And I'm not pointing fingers, but I'm pointing mostly north, because I've been up in Brevard County in some of their areas, and I think there's still trash out there. But it's still an involved test of patience kind of project to get the FEMA resolved and actually get some kind of reimbursement. The other scary part is 5 years they have that they can come back and say, oh, regardless of what we signed off on before, there were errors made or mistaken advice, and they're not accountable. I mean, they can come back like they did in Vero, and I think they were after 4 years, they come back to them with a bill for things they'd already reimbursed for. So I'm hoping the $5 million level at least remains, and if we've got to ride with that $2 million and hopefully not spend it until we know FEMA's
Well,
not
if
going
it
to have a
does,
chance
it'd
to
be
come
nice
back
to
at
see
it.
some of that separated out of that bucket, put somewhere and designated to use in storm events. So you just don't suck it up doing other stuff with it, you know what I mean? It will be sitting there just for an event like this.
Yeah.
And then it wouldn't be in that, you wouldn't look at that number, see $5.3 million on there, you'd be seeing something like $3.2 million. Or either change well, that's a resolution, you've got those policies and procedures in for those
Yes.
fund balance reserves and stuff?
Could be easily modified, sure.
Okay, Michael, what do you got?
Well, for all intents and purposes, right now, until council, after reading this, the draft for the 8th meeting, and then also getting with Joe and finding out what he's gonna come up with for a priority list, while it's nice to spitball and we can sit and discuss and we can angle it from every way and think what would be nice going forward and how we could, develop our own priority list. Ultimately, they're the ones who have the say, and even though they do take our input, I think I'll hold off on giving my input until we know what direction they're gonna kind of point us in.
Okay. Starting out the other end?
I agree with Mr. Frank. I think we pretty much said and heard all we can at this time. I'm good.
Harry? Sergio?
Yeah, I'll wait until the 8th. I think Ed pretty much
Well, I think
outlined.
Ed helped us all with
Yeah.
that list he had. Ed had the whole thing. Ed had the, like, the overview, if you will, for
From the working
everything
waterfront,
we
the
need to look at.
lagoon
He had
to
it
the-
all right there. I thought it was a
Sure.
pretty good list he had.
Absolutely.
And they gave me a copy of your list, Ed.
Okay, good.
And then I'll get with Ken and look this stuff up. Okay, now we want to review the budget calendar and the next meeting day scheduled for February 13th. Harry, did you get a chance to look at that?
Yes, I did, and I just want to ask Ken one quick question before we go over to calendar,
Okay,
if it's
shoot.
okay. Ken, how are we doing with we were purchasing equipment to do the drainage instead of one of those half?
Quarter
quarter
round.
round.
Quarter rounds, okay. Have we purchased the equipment, and if so, is it out there being used, or is that something that we need to also consider additional funding in the coming year, or I'm not sure where we are on that.
One of the key pieces of equipment was referred to as an armadillo,
Yeah.
which is a mower on an extension type thing to get down into the swales. You know, we meet every couple of weeks. The city manager goes with each department head. We go through all the outstanding projects, and that's why I know a little bit, enough to be dangerous probably on where they stand on it, but I think the discussion this last week at our meeting was that the armadillo is a two-piece. I mean, you have your truck chassis, and then you've got the equipment that is mounted on it. You get the chassis from one vendor, that equipment is mounted. Well, supposedly the truck at long last has been completed and provided to the people that will put the equipment on the truck. But we are yet to receive and get in operation this armadillo that would help. We've got other units available, but they're prone to breakdown. That was part of the reason of getting this new piece, is that it would be more productive to have that kind of equipment out there than what we were trying to live with. But the quarter round, yes, we determined, or the city determined, that it was causing more maintenance issues because it would come up as trucks drove over it in the swale, and that's why we changed directions and said we're better off just keeping the swales properly maintained.
Well, the reason I brought it up is every time somebody asks, or I mention that I'm on the budget committee, probably 80% of the time, so that'll be one thing they'll ask me to see if I can get more information on. So that's the reason I brought it up.
Well,
'Cause
the
I
quarter
guess
rounds
the
have actually
quarter-
stopped, right?
I'm sorry?
Yes.
We've actually stopped the quarter round project. They're not doing that anymore.
We did discontinue that, yes.
Right.
And there's a lot of citizens that are not aware of that, and when I tell them that, they're like, well, what are we doing now? And I said, well, we're supposed to be getting equipment. Where we are on that, I don't know. I'll see if I can find out.
That would be an appropriate question for the city engineer probably too, or really it's probably the public works director, but we can probably hopefully in the process here get you some better information to share with
Appreciate it.
those people that are asking, so.
There's another piece of equipment that we discussed back almost a year ago when we were talking about roads, and that's the big problem of potholes. And ultimately, the decision was made to buy a pothole repair machine. And it was subsequently purchased in roughly July. It's still not here. Not the city's fault.
What'd you say, it's still not here?
It's still not here. It's due here shortly, because I was talking to Ken the other day, and
Is this like the tank that keeps the asphalt stuff hot so it doesn't cool down on you when you just throw it in the back of a dump truck and bring it here?
Yeah, it's got all kinds of
You can
things.
do the hot patch instead of the cold patch.
Yeah, but it cuts the holes square or rectangle, whatever you want. It's got a compactor. It's got hot oil that you spray the hole with to seal it and so on and so forth.
So that's called a patch truck?
Yeah, and we got caught by the EPA of all people, not the city, but the truck manufacturer.
Yeah, I see where it's encumbered here for 156,000.
Yeah, and anyway, the manufacturer couldn't get his engine approved and had to buy some other engine, and finally got it delivered to the batch manufacturer in East Texas, and he's built the thing, and I guess we'll see it soon.
That was at last week's meeting, they were talking about some scheduling of his bringing the truck from Texas and driving it here, which was a good thing because some of the bugs would be worked out of it.
Somebody drives it here, and then we get 3 days of training before it goes out on the road. And I happened to see this thing, and they were talking, the city engineer was talking about it, and the city manager, and I happened to see one. So I told them about it, and they all of me bought it. Indian River County's got one, and I watched them do a patch. That patch is now 2.5 years old. It's just as good as the day they put it in, and it gets beaten every day.
Oh, yeah.
At the end of Indian River Drive up north. And so we get rid of the potholes for good in this place, and we've got an awful lot of them.
Well, that saves the base too. That saves the base of the road, and it makes it a lot easier. You can just do a simple overlay instead of having to reconstruct a mile or two of the road. Because that runs your cost up, doubles your cost when you got to get down and redo the base.
Well, this won't do that.
No, I know, it'll do the pothole patches.
Yeah, yep.
Okay. Well, I guess the general consensus is then we've looked at the calendar, and we'll just wait for the agenda for the 13th meeting and have more of this discussion we've been having at the 13th meeting. I think it was a very good discussion.
Quick question
Edifying.
Yes, sir.
on scheduling, and I don't know whether you want to do it. I can't make the 13th, and I'd like to be in on this discussion. Is there any chance that we can move this meeting to the next week, which is the 20th? Now, I don't know whether that conflicts with anything you people want to do. If you can't, you can't. And I don't know whether the city typically doesn't have meetings on Monday.
Actually, we have the Parks and Rec Board that very often meets
They're two.
every month. That's where I usually run into conflict with a Monday meeting, but
So you want to roll the 13th meeting back a week, Ed? Is that
Oh,
what?
forward
forward.
to the
Forward.
20th. Well, Ken, could you look into it?
You want to roll it
Wants to make it February the 20th.
February the 20th.
the 20th.
That would give us an extra week to look at what the city council proposed too.
Yeah,
I'm not sure I'm going to be available on the 20th.
you're going to go break your leg
Let,
skiing?
actually, yes.
I didn't mean that.
I'll see what I can do. I can come up with some, an alternative date maybe, and
We gotta do that and send us an email, because I'm pretty much okay with the whole month of February.
Yeah,
I'm good with the 20th also,
That's
I'd
okay with me.
appreciate it if you could, Ken. If you can't, you can't.
but not later in that week, because some of us here on the board will be at the Honda Classics, so.
Well, that's the end of the month, Harry. We got time for that.
That's the 23rd.
It's the 20th. It starts the 20th.
But I'm saying if we changed it to later in that week.
We don't get down on the 20th. We get down on the 21st. We get down on Thursday.
okay,
So see what you can work out, Ken, and let us know.
I can do that.
But I think everybody's okay with
Sure.
setting it back a week to the 20th. That's certainly no issue for me.
No worries.
we'll see what we can work out for you.
Thank you.
Anything else? Any other comments for the good of the order?
Motion, we adjourn.
We're adjourned.